I don't like Anita Gibbs, but I fully acknowledge that the show needed her. Hi everyone, for today's March Garbage Challenge, I decided to try something a little bit different and talk about a character in the big hit show Suits, the primary antagonist for the second half of season 5, Anita Gibbs. I I really don't like this character, and it's a bit complex to explain why. On the one hand, I understand that she is an antagonist, and you're not actually supposed to like her. She drags Mike Ross to probably the lowest point he's ever been in the series. And so, yeah, obviously not supposed to like this character. But my problem is, I feel they went a little bit too far, actually. Now, before that, just want to give a little bit of context about where Anita fits into the show. So she is the antagonist, as I said, for the latter half of season 5. At this point of the series, most of the big conflicts in Suits has already been settled. For example, Lewis now knows about that Mike's a fraud, and he's kind of okay with it, and that whole issue has been settled. And I think the writers were starting to look for what could be the next big conflict. A big reason I suspect why they decided to take a gamble on this character is that the show was starting to get a little bit predictable. At this point, we kind of know what to expect from any given situation. We always kind of just know that Harvey will come in and just know exactly what to say with that impish little smile of his, or that Mike will somehow come up with a brilliant deduction with his superhuman memory. And so I kind of understand that they really needed something a little bit different. Now, I can see it that the show has a couple of options here. They can either keep going with this formula of just write it into the ground. Every time a new character comes up, they can just kind of bait and switch this whole thing about, say they're going to find out about Mike. And it's going to keep going until Harvey comes in and just magically says the right words. Then boom, everything is sorted until it resets magically for the next episode, and we continue on und so weiter, and so weiter, and so forth, and so forth. And that runs the risk of just plummeting the reviews and interest for the show. So I can understand the writers really didn't want to touch that. The other option is they simply let the show end. Ending a high-profile show like Suits in the middle of season 5, where that's still plenty of momentum. Yeah, good luck with that. I would love to see how you can get an executive producer to sign off on that. So that's probably not going to happen. Even though they kind of teased this whole thing about Mike saying maybe he wants to get out, maybe he wants to say, nope, I'm done. Now, you could do that. You can certainly end the season on Mike riding into the sunset with Rachel, and they kiss and they live happily ever after. But good luck with that. Trying to get a producer to sign off on something like that when Suits still has so much potential and so much momentum. Yeah, probably not going to happen. And then they went with the most obvious logical solution, option 3. Put Mike in a situation where his fraud is exposed, and he finally gets ousted and goes to jail. Enter Anita Gibbs. Now, right off the bat, Anita treats Mike with kind of contempt. So when I initially watched this, I thought, okay, so Anita is going to be this almost vigilante, kind of like the Punisher in a business suit. So I thought, okay, she's going to be like this kind of character. She comes in and she has this, she's on this cause. She's going to rid the New York justice system of any corruptions. Now, obviously, a guy like Mike that's seemingly living on the corner of Easy Street and Gravy Boulevard is obviously going to draw her ire, and she's going to go for this guy and just root him out. And for the most part, I'm like totally fine with that. I thought, okay, pretty interesting villain, and yeah, it makes sense. This show is in need of some drastic changes. Why not? I totally like this. But then we run into a kind of a problem here, and that is what happens when Anita starts blackmailing Lewis and threatening Rachel's legal career. In the moment, it makes for good drama. It's like, oh boy, this is getting serious. I want to keep watching what's going on. But when you take a step back, that kind of doesn't fit with the archetype of the vigilante. Like, you're against corruption and injustice, and you're blackmailing people. Like, what gives? So, okay, now I'm thinking, hey, okay, this is interesting, nice little twist to have here. So maybe they're going to try something else there. Anita, at first appearance, is like a vigilante, but in actuality, she is more like a hired gun, someone that will do anything to get the job done. The ends justifies the means kind of character. Like, maybe someone in the Justice Department has a grievance against Harvey. Goodness knows he has that effect on people, and they want to, and they feel the best way to kind of go after him is to go after his protege. So they hire Anita, and she comes in and she goes to his house. But the problem of that is this character is never really introduced. I know there was this one guy, I can't remember call his name, but I know that he kind of had a grudge, but it was never tied. Anita was never specifically mentioned that she was tied to this other character. So it seems that Anita is just operating on own initiative. She's going to take down Mike Ross. Okay. So now the show is getting a bit conflicting. Like, okay, you have two kind of general ideas, two kind of archetypes she's going. She is kind of this mixture between a hired gun that will do anything to get the job done, and then this kind of the ultimate cop that really wants to put an end to corruption and guys operating without a legal license. And now, to make things even more complicated, let's add a third dimension to it. So getting to the trials, things are getting more and more and more desperate. And I remember one thing that really stood out to me was when Mike was having his trial. He walks into another trial and he starts representing this guy. Now, yeah, obviously it's a dramatization, not actually based on real life. So yeah, I guess I can let slide this. The guy just representing someone else on the standing trial himself. But then at one point, Anita walks into this trial and she just has this vitriol. You cannot let this guy be a lawyer, Your Honor. He is just absolutely, he's a fraud. He has no business here. And yeah, in one sense, kind of makes sense, but it's almost like she's selling it a little bit too hard. Like, she has this personal vendetta that she just can't stand this guy. She has to get him out. And so now you have three possible motivations. And honestly, I don't like this third one the least. Yeah, it can work, I guess, but you gonna have to do a bit of setup. It's not like personal investment. Like, yeah, like for example, like you could do this with Trevor, Mike's friend. He and Mike has some sort of history. You can kind of delve into that as a possible reason for his motivation. Way back when Trevor went to Jessica, you can kind of see why he did that. He has a sort of history of Mike. He wants to get back at his childhood friend. He feels cheated on him with a girl. Okay, that makes more sense, but that doesn't work with Anita because she has like no prior interaction with Mike before being introduced. Now, I'm sorry, Suits, short of Mike running over her pet or her kid, or witnessing how he scammed an orphanage out of money, I'm not buying this personal vendetta that she has against him. It just doesn't make sense. There's not enough motivation for it. It's like, why are you doing this? And I felt like the writers ultimately kind of knew that they kind of pushed it a little bit too far, because I saw on YouTube, before I even started watching the show, I saw this clip, and I think it's way at the end of the show, when Anita is sitting on the board of, I think, the ethics board that's going to review Mike's case for actually becoming a full-time lawyer. Give a spoiler alert for sure that it's already ended, but I remember the scene where Jessica walks in and she tells the story about Mike, and she tells the story about this medical student. I think it was took drugs that was meant for the company, and that could have actually get her fired until a certain upstanding prosecutor didn't go ahead and prosecute her and gave her a second chance. And doesn't take a genius to figure out that prosecutor was Anita. Now, obviously, I think this entire interaction is going to show there's a bit more to the character. They kind of knew they were pushing a little bit too hard, and they kind of had to give her more human side. That's all fun and good, but the problem is what is your motivation here? Why is that okay? And the story about an orphan with a genius memory working as a fraud at a law firm isn't. Like, what gives? Why save this student, but you don't get? But Mike is just it's beyond the pale. I think the thing that the writers wanted, they ended up they had this vision. They wanted to end season 5 with Mike in handcuffs, go walking into jail. And they decided, okay, how can we get him in there? And they come up with this character that's supposed to just be just absolutely guns for Mike, just nails him in every corner, just goes for him, and gets Mike into the lowest point he's ever been in the series. So yeah, you end up with this really confusing character that's easy to dislike, but I think deep down, Anita is right. No matter how you slice and dice it, Mike is a fraud. He can save as many people as he wants. He can save as many struggling businesses as he wants, falsely accuse people, but ultimately he is a fraud. And I really found this going to jail could have been a huge stepping stone for the character, a huge milestone for the character, both for the character and for the show. Like this turning point, it's kind of ultimately says, no matter how clever you are or how good you are at a job, ultimately your past actions are going to catch up with you. Now, of those three I mentioned, those three possible ideas I mentioned, the one I liked the most, one I felt feels the best fitting, is the first one, that Anita is some kind of vigilante, a pillar of justice that's going to rid the New York justice system of any corruption. I felt that would be the best kind of archetype for Mike to face, the best kind of antagonist, because we've seen characters that have personal grudges, and we've seen characters that will do anything to get the job done. But we haven't seen an antagonist that is just an upstanding vigilante that will catch Mike, because let's be honest, Mike is a fraud. Anita has enough material to work with if she goes through with this. And that's I think what worked about the character. If she didn't go on this, have this kind of weird conflicting motivations, and just stick her just as a straight as it just stick with the vigilante justice, then that will rule out corruption wherever it goes, because that will be the most. I feel like it would have been political justice if Mike fell by the hands of someone that wasn't corrupt, that wasn't the typical change the rules whenever they want kind of character that we've seen so far in the show. I think it would have been political justice if the one character that took him down was ultimately just someone that is just a lover of justice. It could have been like a mirror image of Mike. Now, ultimately, Anita, despite all the kind of flaws, does play a pivotal part in Suits. She's the character that forces the show to go into a new direction and gives the writers that opportunity to explore the characters in new, interesting scenarios. So Mike goes to prison, but it also affects Harvey. He has to adjust to a world where he has to work on his own without this like right-hand man helping him out. Now, make no mistake, Anita is a great antagonist. But I think if they spend a bit more time developing her motivations, she could have been the perfect antagonist.